Last night, the British Parliament, the MPs convened in the House of Commons for a special debate on Afghanistan. So many of the members spoke with great passion and conviction about the plight of the Afghan people and the consequences right around the world of America's retreat. One of them, I watched a great part of last night's proceedings, was Conservative MP, former leader of the opposition in the Blair years, Sir Iain Duncan Smith.
The chaotic, ghastly departure, the way that people were falling off the aircraft in their determination to get away and the helicopter shipping people out, says terrible things about the values that we hold and those who we wish to protect. So this is a shame on all of us, not just America, but also the whole of NATO and here for us in this House.
So Iain, who's an unwavering friend of Australia, joins me now live from London. Thank you for your time. I watched it last night. It was compelling viewing. I love the passion of the MPs in the Commons. I love the fact that you all speak from the heart without notes. It's something that's terrible here. That's often a dirge. I want to ask you, you've seen these pictures coming out of Kabul, as we all have over recent days. How have you felt personally watching what you see?
Well, I felt ashamed, I'll be quite frank with you, ashamed about all of us, really, America, Britain, just the whole lot of us who espouse the values of tolerance, democracy, human rights, the rule of law. And here we were, literally tumbling out of Afghanistan, being pursued by a group of people who were relatively lightly armed and who have now dismissed, you could argue, some of the world's greatest powers, particularly the world's greatest superpower. And my worry on this is, what does it say about those who we seek to protect? What will they think in future? That, you know, their word is only as good as a few weeks or months, and they could change their minds after an election. And the second bit, which really worries me, and I tried to make this point very clearly, was that here we stand at the threshold of a genuine and serious geopolitical threat. We see the advance now of those authoritarian states, Russia, China, and their acolytes. We see that they are hell-bent on growing their ideology, not just their territorial size. And what are we now seen to be doing is departing from what is actually a very strategic part of the world, because it borders Russia, close to Russia, it's close to China. It's above Pakistan, who seems to have thrown in their cards completely with the Chinese now. And, you know, you in Australia know very well what it's like to be bullied by China, who doesn't care a damn. And the most telling bit of this, which I did put in the speech, was where we spotted that the Chinese mouthpiece was now saying, look out, Taiwan, America will not be there for you. We're coming. And this was re-emphasized again 24 hours later. We have to figure out what we're going to do, because very shortly we're going to be challenged on a bigger scale by China and by Russia, and we need to have a unity and a purpose.
Well, we certainly have covered the Global Times comments in relation to Taiwan here heavily in Australia. Just take me back to the withdrawal. Remarkable speech from the US president only in July, saying that none of what transpired would happen. He didn't believe it was inevitable. It was going to be orderly. It would never be like the fall of Saigon. In fact, it was eerily similar and still is. How did the West get the withdrawal so wrong?
I think the problem is this has been put, and this is where the American president made a major error. He put a political timetable as the key. Number one, why would you withdraw troops during the campaign season, during the summer? This is the time when the fights normally are at their fiercest. So why pull people out at this point? Why not wait until you get into the winter and then start doing it, where it's a little easier to control? And I'm sure the military made that point to him very clearly. They said, don't do this now, but he went ahead because he had this artificial September the 11th, 20th anniversary that he wanted to be able to stand up in front of the electorate in America and say, there, we did it. Well, I think that is shameful. The second part of it is that he blamed, I thought, which was just awful, he blamed the Afghan forces for collapsing as though they were cowards. The truth is, that the Americans decided to withdraw their air cover, a significant portion of their air cover, early on. And the moment that was gone, it gave the edge away from the Afghan forces. Then they saw colleagues of theirs in other cities being executed if they fought the Taliban and were captured. So their morale sank. They hadn't been paid. The corruption in the government was too great. They hadn't been paid for weeks, often no supplies. So, this was all known to the Americans, the British, to even your intelligence services. All this was well known. And yet the American president chose to go ahead with this, and he could have ameliorated it and made it a more reasonable withdrawal. The way we withdrew is almost as important as the decision to withdraw. This was shambolic, and he must carry the can for that. And I have to say, without any sort of apology, it is shameful of him to blame everybody else. This is not what being a good leader is all about. Shoulder the blame, for God's sake.
Yeah, he has copped, and I think rightly, I agree with you, a lot of criticism around the world, even from people who would traditionally be in his camp. Go back to the point you made before about China, and you were very strong about China. And we first spoke here on the program when you were trying to convince your Prime Minister not to back in Huawei to build your 5G network. You won out in that, and thank God you did, because the world's very different than it was 2 years ago on that point. But if he is so weak in the management of the withdrawal, this is the President Biden, if he is so weak in the management of the withdrawal, then how confident are we that he can stand up to China, particularly now that China and Russia and Iran have a new terrorist state in Afghanistan at their disposal?
Yeah, this is an unanswered question, and I guess that we will see how this develops. But 2 points come out of this. The first is that we are rapidly seeing the numbers of states that you could count as part of the free world that have democracy, the rule of law. That is falling as a proportion of the overall number of states. And we are about to see, probably, should be alarming, that there is every chance that the world's biggest economic power will itself not be a democracy for the first time in modern history. Now, this really poses us a challenge. And my question really to the United States is very simple. Are they now prepared to stand by those words that I quoted from John F. Kennedy all those years ago, that they would bear any burden, pay any price to defend liberty and freedom? Now, this is the key element that has transpired all the way through this. And I have a very simple point, which is he needs to make that very, very clear and very early. We face a big challenge. And the truth is, whatever else Australia or Britain or anybody else thinks, America is both the greatest and best hope we have of securing freedom and liberty. We need to work with them. And I have criticized my government for not putting their foot down and saying to the Americans, this is ridiculous. You cannot withdraw like this at this time. We need to lengthen this out and do it at the right moment, and do it in a way that reflects well on us, not badly. And I would have wished that our government had done just that. I don't think they did. I think some tried to persuade them, but I think what we should have all done is said, stop, 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 get rid of this artificial date. Let's work on what works best, not on the date.
Well, we'll see what happens from here on in, but the world would be unimaginable without a strong America, and that is the challenge, is to put steel back into their spine. Sir Iain Duncan Smith, thank you. I really appreciate your time tonight from London.
Pleasure.